What sets Souls games apart is how ridiculously hard they are, but what a lot of people don't know is that they used to be way more difficult. It's a fact that FromSoftware games are released in an ambitious state, until the community comes crying and Daddy Miyazaki comes to wipe the tears out of our faces by removing unbalanced crap. So, how about we investigate the most brutal features in their Soulsborne games that were removed for making players go insane? And there's none better to start talking about insanity than Bloodborne, and how our insight went to waste, even if we didn't use it. In Bloodborne, insight is a currency that can either be earned by seeing things that make your hunter go, or by consuming the item from your inventory. Eventually, it boils down to smart people money, which means you can spend it on the messenger's bath, to acquire resources and Victorian drip, or to summon other players. Every time you ring the bell and the game starts looking for an online player to join you, you lose one insight. In the current patch, that insight is recoverable if you die while waiting for a jolly cooperator to spawn. But that wasn't the case before. If you died, tough luck. The insight was a goner without even giving it any use. That sucked because it incentivized the players to play it safe, to stay put somewhere with no enemies until they got the help they wanted, instead of continuing to play around as you wait for the summon. And that wasn't the only insane aspect of our dear Bloodborne. The loading screens were crazy long. I'm talking about 1 minute, with no FromSoft original storytelling, and every time you had to level up or upgrade a weapon, you had to go through 2 of these. Luckily, Bloodborne is a game from 2015, when the average teenager didn't have their dopamine receptors fried. Just imagine asking a 17-year-old now to sit through 2 unending loading screens with nothing but the game title to look at for every time they visit the Hunter's Dream. Something else that has been vastly improved about the Hunter's Dream is that this messenger's bath doesn't require 10 insight anymore to access it. Yes, that was a thing, being rejected by a store for being too stupid to even browse items. While this isn't as punishing as some features I will mention later, it's pretty annoying not to be able to purchase materials, namely for the chalices, just because the game says you need to see a couple more tentacles. Another thing that damaged the quality of life of the game was the storage limit. Right now, hunters can store 600 units of every item in the stash box, but back then, the most you could store were 99 units. Right now, that wouldn't bother me because I'm a full-time professional Yarnum hunter. But back then, in Souls games, when I was so green I pissed grass, just imagine. Any hunter can have 20 vials at once, and then 99 more in the Hunter's Dream. That's 6 tries at a boss, consuming every vial per try. And I won't lie, Ebrietas and the Crow took me way longer than 6 tries. That means for every roadblock you came across, the Yarnum trolls sighed deeply and said, Moving on to Elden Ring, we all know that by the endgame, if you've explored the Lands Between thoroughly, fighting the Godskins for the 7th time feels more repetitive than listening to Souls shorts banging Animal Life Become in the background. But did you know they were even worse? For some reason, probably a bug and not really a feature, your summon would always disappear after you've defeated the first 2 Godskins. I'm not someone who relied on summons to finish the game, but I would be lying if I told you I pulled my punches whenever I fought these 2 bastards. The fight is as uninteresting as reading the terms of service, and on top of that, it's quite difficult to fight the Elden Ring staple of making a duo fight out of 2 bosses that don't really synergize well. So, as you're watching in the footage, I went for one of the most broken patch 1.0 builds, which is as simple as using the Ash of War Hoarfrost stomp with a bleed weapon, such as a katana, and you'll be proccing bleed and frostbite every other stomp. These guys deserve nothing less. An actual feature that grinded my gears was the inability to summon Torrent versus the Elden Beast. I'ma be honest with you, I really disliked what they did with the boss gauntlet towards the end of the game. Setting us up for something incredible. First Godfrey, the first Tarnished to become Elden Lord. Next we got Radagon, who abandoned the Enchantusi to plug his Johnson in his own ass, the protector of the Golden Order. And then, this thing. And on top of that, have the gameplay suck ass was a curious developing decision. It runs away and you don't have the means to catch up. Luckily, 2 years later with the release of Shadow of the Erdtree, they decided it was time to add torrents to the fight, which made catching up to it much easier, and also to evade some of its projectiles, which felt very inconsistent whether they hit you or not. Better late than never, I guess. For Dark Souls 2, I gotta go with the lack of the agape ring in the vanilla version. For those who don't know it, Dark Souls 2 doesn't pair you for PvP and jolly cooperation based on your character level, but rather your soul memory. And that is the total amount of souls you've earned with a character. Both the ones you've spent and the ones you've lost after dying. So why was it brutal? Because in a few words, player A, who's level 600, could invade player B, who's level 150, since they had earned roughly the same souls, but player A actually used them to level up, opposite to player B, who earns them and then died without spending them. The problem doesn't stop here, because Dark Souls 2 had the incredibly intelligent idea of allowing players who are hollowed to be invaded! That means there was no way to be safe from invasions unless you burnt a human effigy, an item that was important for summoning players, restoring your HP, and progressing in the Pilgrims of Dark questline. So in order to stop progressing your soul memory, you can equip this ring, which absorbs the souls you earn, and that will halt your progress towards the next threshold, where all the twinks are salivating waiting for easy praise to come by. However, this solution didn't last long because assholes have an incredible imagination when trolling other players is on the line. What happened is that the perpetrators actually started equipping the ring very early on, in order to stay in a low threshold. Since they're good at the game, they would finish it without leveling up much, acquiring endgame weapons and upgrading them, since they made better use of the souls they earned, and prey on the weak who are just starting and dying a gazillion times. There really was no rest for the wicked. The best option was to just play offline altogether. Entering Dark Souls 1 terrain, there are two incredibly punishing features that were changed to prevent players from committing harakiri, and those are the addition of the Vamos bonfire and the curse strength basilisks and Seath had. There's not much to explain about the Vamos bonfire thing, it didn't exist, so there was nothing between this bonfire and the next. I know you're thinking, but bro, Pinwheel is a joke. There's no way you need a bonfire in case you die to him. In my defense, Your Honor, it's not him that I'm scared of, but this. Yeah, that's not an editing mistake, by the way. I'm talking about the darkness in Tomb of the Giants. Fall down to the pits of hell, quite literally, and you'll have to walk from here, all the way here, every time you die before the patch's bonfire. So I say it was a necessary addition. Plus, curses worked differently. I love how they looked at the potential these little dudes had to reduce your HP to half, and said, nope, that's not enough. I wanted to get reduced by half every time the player gets cursed, and that's why some walked around flashing other players with their small health bar. This was paired perfectly with the fact that the undead merchants near the shrine had no purging stones in her inventory, so you either had to drop all the way down to New Londo and have it cured by Ingvard, or climb all the way up to the Gargoyles arena, where Oswald could show you his stones. In Dark Souls 3, we had to wait for the Rain City DLC to be released, and boy oh boy the wait was worth it. For this section, we're interested in the damage caused by the angels. It was pretty nasty. Let me show you some clips. Needless to say, the only nerf they received was a reduced damage patch. Their damage is still nothing to sneeze at, but it's quite the upgrade for the Ashen one, honestly. And finally, Sekiro. Considering this game had no weapons and no builds, it was released in a very fair state. Although its original features weren't as discouraging as some I've mentioned in this list, there were a couple that managed to anger players. Firstly, the infamous Blazing Bullfight. All they did was reduce its health. And while that was not enough, in my opinion they had to delete this character coding entirely and erase it from existence. I guess the health update is decent too. According to many players, after the red-eyed ogre skill check, their next big obstacle was the bull. It's hilarious how so many of them commented this after the patch. I would look forward to seeing their opinion had they fought the buffed bowl. And finally, I also wanted to mention how impossible it was to fight the Shishimen warriors and the Headless in your first playthrough. Not because of how difficult they were, OGs who watch my videos know the Headless only had one health bar, but because of how limited Confetti was. It was only patch 103 that Ashina fencers started dropping some after you defeated them. In 1.0, all you could do was relying on the ones you find in some locations of Ashina. If you didn't make the most out of these, the Japanese yokai had to wait until Wolf defeated the true corrupted monk, after which he obtains a statue that allows vendors to sell confetti. If you're interested in knowing more about the 1.0 version and how different it was, I've made a video covering the topic, showing every difference from Sekiro's factory version. For my next video, we'll be investigating what Soulsborne community has the worst multiplayer etiquette. See you in the next one, comrades. Take care.